Hello, welcome to Mental Health Hour. I am Dr. Tapo, and I am pleased to be spending the next hour speaking to you about our mental health. Uh, I always start by talking about the weather because maybe it's a Canadian thing. I don't know. We seem to spend a lot of time talking about the weather because we have extremes. In the summer, it can be very, very hot. In the winter, it can be very, very cold. And right now in the fall, it's kind of somewhere in between. The evenings can tend to be a little chilly, and the afternoons can still be quite warm. Um, I hope you're doing well wherever you are in the world. I hope you and your loved ones are well, are happy, have joy. Um, I always talk about our feelings, and one of the things that in therapy, a lot of clients will, when I ask them, like, so what brings you here, or why are you in therapy? A lot of people say, I just want to be happy. And then I ask them, okay, so what does happy look like? What does happy feel like? What do you mean happy? And turns out a lot of people want to be happy, but they don't actually know if they were to design their happiness, what would it look like? We talk about maybe if I had more money, maybe if I was married, maybe if I had children, maybe if I had a big house, an expensive car, all of these things that we tend to think are the things that make us happy. But we also know that rich people have problems. We know that a lot of successful people take their own lives. September is Suicide Awareness Month, and we have been talking about suicide in previous sessions. And I just wanted to bring it up briefly again. Like when we chase happy, sometimes the things that we're chasing have the opposite effect, the opposite impact on our lives. We're chasing money, and that doesn't make us happy. I've known people that are in good, stable relationships, but they are not happy. So they start chasing other people, men chasing women that are younger than them, or whatever it is, but they're still not happy. So I think it's good to take a moment and think about what is happiness to you. And often when we take away all these materialistic things like cars and money and houses and jewelry and designer shoes or whatever it is, what is left is often what will make us happy, like what will actually make us happy at the end of the day. And sometimes when we stop trying to impress the world, impress the neighbors, impress the girl or the boy or whatever, and just be ourselves, our authentic and real selves, we find that that's where happiness comes from. So, this Suicide Awareness Month, September, just think about some of the things that you're putting a lot of time and energy into, and your idea of happiness. What does it actually cost at the end of the day? And you'll find it's not what we think that will make us happy. It's often what we have already. We, like, research shows that people who practice gratitude, who find something to be grateful for every day, tend to be the happier people in life. So it's not those that set their 5-year goal of climbing up the ladder, buying this and buying that. Those are often not the people that are happy. It's the people that are grateful and appreciative and show gratitude to the people around them for daily life, even for the simple things that we tend to take for granted. One of the things that brings me personally, that makes me really happy, is just being outside. Like, just like, it doesn't have to be just being outside in nature with the trees and the birds and the squirrels, and just being outside. That's something I personally, when I'm in that space, I feel happier, and it doesn't cost me anything. Before I go any further, just a reminder that the Mental Health Hour is for education and information, awareness raising only. I don't replace your physician, your psychologist, your therapist who is licensed and registered in your locality, in your locale, in your city, in your town, in your village. I don't replace your priest or your pastor. I'm just giving information and education. You can call or text 437 778 3299, 437 778 3299, or email infolovebay@gmail.com. Infolovebay@gmail.com. Send in your questions, send in your comments. If you send them right now, I think there's a way that I can actually get them live, which would be great. So I started talking a couple of weeks ago about stress. We started talking about stress, the signs and symptoms of stress. I won't go over them again, but just a reminder, if you have been feeling stressed for 2 weeks or so, it's time to go to the doctor. You don't nurture stress, you don't hold on to stress, you don't wait like a badge of honor. One of your most important goals in life should be to rid yourself of stress, because once you learn how to manage stress, and there's some things, like I gave the example last week, if you have 5 children, you're stressed. There's no way you can be raising 5 children and not be stressed. And that's okay, because there's some things that come with the territory. And that's why you should eliminate as much stress from your life as you can, because there are some stresses that you cannot. We love our children, we love our cats and dogs, but it's stressful. And that's okay. But if your car is giving you stress and you can walk everywhere, get rid of the car and walk. It's healthier. You spend more time outside and you got rid of stress. That's just a very simplistic and maybe even unrealistic example, depending on where you live and the circumstances. Public transportation, a simple example. But for example, if you live in Toronto, downtown Toronto, guaranteed driving will give you stress. But if you stop driving in downtown Toronto, just park your car, or better still, sell it, buy a bicycle, or just take public transit, you will be a lot happier, you will be a lot less stressed, and you'll probably save more money. So everybody has some area in their lives where maybe you need to downgrade something. Some of the things we have in our homes, in our lives, in our lifestyles and circumstances, when you really look about it, it's about status symbols and impressing so and so, or proving something. But the more we hold on to that thing, the more stressed we are. So let's appreciate those 5 children that stress us out. But let's get rid of other things that we really, really do not need that stress in our lives. Because stress, like I said before, leads to other more chronic, more crippling, more impacting illnesses and disorders, physically, It can impact your heart, it can impact your organs, it impacts the even hormonal functioning in your body, which then also impacts your hormones. So get rid of stress. Be somebody who, like, if you were to list your best skills, stress management should be one of them. Stress management should be something you strive for and really become an expert at. The more you learn to do that, the better, because you can actually be somebody physically who's healthy, but eventually your stress will change that. You can go to the gym, all this stuff, eat right, and all of that. But if you're constantly stressed, it will impact your physical health. So be someone who prioritizes stress management as part of self care. Then I started talking about anxiety related disorders. I started talking about generalized anxiety disorder, which is the more common type of anxiety disorder that people are diagnosed with. So it's basically uncontrolled worry, and you can't really pinpoint what it is that is worrying you. Sometimes you might have anxiety because of a specific situation, and then you find when that situation is gone, it's resolved. Maybe it's a person, maybe it's an illness, maybe it's a specific upcoming event. But once that thing has passed, you don't have anxiety anymore, you're fine. I have experienced that in my own life. Sometimes with certain relationships, I found that I was always anxious, and but as soon as that relationship ended or that person exited my life, no more anxiety. I was a lot better. So that's more situational. When we talk about generalized anxiety disorder, you more or less cannot point to a specific thing as this is what gives me anxiety. You'll find a lot of things give you that worrying because it's generalized. You're just constantly, uncontrollably worried about everything. You just can't relax. And that starts to impact your appetite and diet. It starts to impact your physical health, your sleep patterns, all of that, right? Generalized anxiety disorder. You start to worry about things happening. And one of the things I always say is, as human beings, what makes us most anxious are the things that have already happened and we can't change them, right? So maybe you went, like, let's say you had a job interview, um, and you forgot to say something, or you say something that you felt wasn't the right thing to say. Now you're worrying all the time. It's in the past. You can't go back and change it, right? So that's one of the things that people tend to worry about a lot, are things that have already come and gone. Maybe they are still impacting your life or have the potential to impact your life, but you can't go back. So it's important to learn how to let things go. If it's done, it's done. Face the consequences, go through whatever impact, but do not carry this anxiety, this worry over something you honestly cannot change because it happened. It's done. If you can apologize for it, if you can remediate it, do what you can, but don't obsess over something in the past. There's just really, honestly, no point. You're impacting your health and need to let it go. The other thing that uh, causes us a lot of anxiety as human beings are things in the unknown future. So let's say you are, I don't know, moving to a new city for a new job. You haven't been in this job yet, but you're already worrying, will my colleagues like me? Will I be able to do the job? And all of these things, because it is unknown and it is in the future and it is things you cannot control. So are you seeing this pattern of that not being able to control things gives you uncontrollable anxiety? You can't control that anxiety because you're anxious about things you cannot control. And those are the things you need to let go of. Things that have happened in the past, because you can't go back and change them. It's done. And things in the future, because you don't know what the future holds. And you can't jump ahead a couple of days to go and prepare things. And then you come back to today so that when you get back, like, you just can't. So you end up with uncontrollable worry. Generalized anxiety disorder is that uncontrollable worry. And it is often about things we cannot control. So you need to, when you're feeling anxious and stressed about things, something I often say to my clients is take a piece of paper. Take a piece of paper, list down everything that's worrying you, absolutely everything, big, small, extra large, ginormous, whatever. Write everything down. And then start to cancel everything you cannot control. You have absolutely no control over this. It's in the past, it's in the future, it's somebody else's job, responsibility, house, wife, cat, whatever, right? Start to cancel out everything you have absolutely no control over. And what you will find is that maybe there's just one, like you will list 20 things, maybe there's one where you might be able to actually do something about it. So keep that in mind when you're feeling anxious, when you're feeling, sometimes me personally, I get agitated and restless. And that's the time when, if I have a treadmill close by, I was talking to my trainer yesterday and saying, like, if my treadmill is not somewhere where I can just get off the couch or off my bed and get on the treadmill, chances are I won't use it. But in spaces where I've been able to have a treadmill close by, I start to feel anxious and agitated, restless, frustrated, whatever. I get on the treadmill, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. It doesn't have to be for long. Why? Because that's something I can control and it's beneficial to me. It helps some of those good, healthy hormones pumping and all that, but it's something I have control over. Some people will talk about, well, I'll listen to music, I'll journal or I'll write, or I'll go out and socialize with my friends. That is something you can control. So list everything down. What is worrying me? What is stressing me? What's on my mind? Then cancel out everything you cannot control. And whatever remains on the page, then make a plan and do that. But why we have generalized anxiety disorder is because it's that constant worry about things we cannot control. And so the anxiety, the worry itself becomes uncontrollable. We have a message here from someone called Nell, and he or she or they said, wow, that's food for thought. Even if we're eating healthy but constantly stressed, our bodies will become sick. That's absolutely true. Your body can be impacted by your stress, sometimes even more than the physical exercise. Like, we're seeing more and more young people developing heart issues, heart problems. I've known a few young people that have had heart attacks. We're talking people in their 20s and 30s. And the number one reason is stress. Like, you can go for a physical, everything is in order, but because of that stress, you're getting sick. So stress management, like, do not sleep on that. Do not neglect that. If you were to put your best skills on your resume or CV, stress management should be there. And me personally, as an employer, if I see stress management as somebody's skills, I would hire that person. I would absolutely hire that person, because I know that they know how to prioritize, they know how to manage their time, they know how to let things go, they know how to take care of themselves. So, stress management, really, really, really read up on that, develop those skills, because you're going to avoid a lot of health issues that way. Okay, so another disorder that can develop because of chronic stress is panic disorder. And people confuse anxiety disorder with panic disorder. You can have anxiety disorder and not have panic attacks. Panic disorder is when you do have panic attacks, and pretty regularly. You can have anxiety disorder and have one panic attack. That doesn't mean you have panic disorder. So, panic disorder is a condition that causes moments of extreme fear, fear that increases your heartbeat, your heart rate, right? A pounding heart, shortness of breath, shaky hands, profuse sweating. Some people actually lose consciousness, they faint because they're panicking. And this can happen frequently. So, a panic disorder is when you are prone to panic attacks. And that can develop due to unmanaged stress. I really want you to understand that the key to all of these things is control, whether or not you have control. And of these disorders, panic disorder, anxiety disorder, phobias, we started talking a little bit last week about OCD, which is obsessive compulsive disorder. These are disorders where you have like no control. You have lost control. And yet, with stress, if you learn to control your stress, you avoid a lot of these types of disorders, because it comes down to control. What can you control? What can you not control? And the things you cannot control, what are you doing in response? Are you worrying until you are so anxious and stressed all the time and end up with anxiety disorder? People tend to have panic disorders when they become overwhelmed. And what that means is they're already at a certain level of stress, certain level of anxiety. Now, please note, I am not interchanging stress and anxiety. Those are two different things in this context. When I say anxiety, I am actually referring to anxiety disorder. And when I say stress, I'm talking about stress, which can, why I said go to the physician. When you go to the physician, they ask a number of questions, one of which is, how long have you had this? If you're talking about 2 months, 3 months, some people can honestly and accurately say, I've been stressed for 2 years. We're now talking chronic stress, which is a disorder. And often that is accompanied by physical symptoms, hypertension, high blood pressure, um, uh, irregular heartbeats. There was a period in my life I was like going through a lot, and I would actually feel my heart skipping several times a day. And that is not my norm. That's not my baseline. I knew this is because of my stress. And the more the stress was controlling my life, the more I would have these symptoms. Sweating a lot, the irregular heartbeats, like high blood pressure. And so I would go to the doctor, they would measure my blood pressure, and it was just ridiculous. And so they ended up saying you need to buy a blood pressure monitor, which I did. They wanted to put me on medications. I said, no, not yet. If I cannot fix this in a certain period of time, how do I fix that? Managing my stress, making sure I am eating healthy, I am exercising, and I am sleeping. Last week, I talked about the importance of sleep hygiene. Do not underestimate the value of sleep in your health. So turn off those devices, make sure you're sleeping nice, clean, fresh sheets and nice pillow that's not uh, hurting your neck so you're tossing and turning all night. Sleep is very, very important. So I would monitor my blood pressure regularly, and I implemented these healthy lifestyle changes, and I did not need to be on medication. And I also, like, I'm just going to be honest, I was in a very, very bad relationship with a very, very bad and cruel person. And when that person exited my life, so did a lot of these symptoms. So sometimes we do need to, like, who is in our life? How are they impacting us? Sometimes you realize that anytime you're around a certain person, your mood changes, you're uncomfortable, you're worrying, you're anxious. And for the rest of the, when you get home or whatever it is, you're lying awake in bed, you can't sleep, all these negative thoughts are running through your mind. And I'm not a cancel culture person. I'm genuinely not. Like, people who know me well know this about me. But there's some people you should not have in your life, like, for real. There are just some people you should not have in your life, because over time you start to see how they're impacting you, right? So stress you can control. A lot of these disorders develop from uncontrolled and unmanaged stress. So now you go to your physician's telling you you have generalized anxiety disorder, maybe with a panic disorder. You also develop other types of mental health disorders, including depression. Most people that have anxiety, and I can't remember off the top of my head, I think it's about 60 or 70% end up diagnosed with depression as well. A lot of people that have chronic stress end up diagnosed with depression as well, because you cannot be stressed all the time and have joy and be mentally healthy and sound. These other things follow. And it really, really, really starts with stress management. How are you controlling the stress factors in your life? There's some things we cannot control, but those that we can, let's do that. Let's be intentional, conscious, mindful, and purposeful about stress management. Okay. And then there's social phobia, which is a condition that causes intense feelings of anxiety in situations that involve interacting with others. Now, how does this come via stress? And this is what I'm talking about. Maybe you're hanging out with people that are just not good for you. And the more time you spend with them, your self-esteem is impacted, right? So you can see that stress is like just this, I'll say, hub of your life going downwards. Your self esteem starts being impacted. your mental health, your self-worth, your relationships, even the good ones, start being impacted because you've just become this irritable person who's difficult to be around. Or the opposite, which is what happens with social phobias, is you just become so anxious about being out with other people. You find yourself isolating more and more. And I've had a few clients that had social phobia and did not go out. They just, anywhere where there's one or two more people, they will not, right? They won't speak in public. I've had students that just could not like do a presentation in front of their peers. Yes, some things are challenging, like public speaking and all of that. But when we're talking about social phobia, it's more than just I'm shy. This is, I literally might have a panic attack, or I can't think, I get confused and disoriented when I'm out interacting with people or socializing with people. It's debilitating. Social phobia is you actually cannot, it's not I'm shy. That's not a social phobia. That's I'm shy. Social phobia is it actually has mental, physical, and emotional symptoms. You can't speak, you're sweating profusely, your heart rate is up, you're shaking, you might lose consciousness, you're confused, you're blacking out, you are, yeah, so many things, right? Because that's what a social phobia is. And we can trace that to stress or from stress. Unmanaged, uncontrollable, it starts to impact you in social situations and social contexts. So you end up isolating more and more. Just the thought of being on a bus, just the thought of being in the classroom, not even in front of the classroom, in that chair that's in the corner that no one's paying attention to, you can't even do that. So your social circle gets smaller and smaller and smaller because that's human beings. We like the people that are easy to be around. And most people with social phobias are not. We can't say to them, oh, let's meet at the pub, or let's meet at the movies, or let's meet, because they have the social phobia. So the only way we can socialize with them is in that small space where they're comfortable. So we socialize with them less and less and less. So their social circles shrink and they become lonely, right? And you might not think of some of these things coming from stress, but that's how it starts. I'm not saying it's the only way it starts, because some social phobias develop after a traumatic event of some kind. Some social phobias are because of another. You might have PTSD, you might have depression, you might have some other condition that also causes social phobia. But stress can actually lead down that road. Because maybe when you're stressed, you get shaky, you sweat a lot, you faint, you like all sorts of things, and it gets worse and worse because you're not managing that stress and you develop this social phobia. So once more, to get in touch, you can call or text us 437 778 3299. So 437-778-3299, or email infolovebay@gmail.com. Send your questions, share your experiences. If you've been diagnosed with anxiety, with panic disorder, if you've been diagnosed with a social phobia, agoraphobia, any type of phobia, get in touch. And then OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder. And this is one of those, like I said last week, you hear a lot of people saying, I'm OCD. Oh, my OCD is acting up. And yeah, no, that's not OCD. That's you being dramatic. That's you being uh, silly, maybe even, because obsessive compulsive disorder, like real, actual obsessive compulsive disorder that real and actual people suffer, is a condition that causes repetitive thoughts and the compulsion to complete certain ritual actions. So on TV, they make it quite dramatic. They make it uh, almost comical sometimes. Like if you've watched shows like I think Monk, which is a show that was running some time ago, and this is a detective who had OCD, and he always kept his arms in a certain place, and things like if you walk through the door, you have to tap the door handle 10 times and all. And yes, that does happen, but it's a very I'll say popularized idea of what OCD is. OCD can be I recall one woman who had she had a missed miscarriage. So she had a miscarriage, didn't realize she had a miscarriage, and carried this now gone fetus for a while. And what happened is, because from a medical perspective, if that fetus is not removed from your body, it can start to I don't know. I don't want to use harsh words like rot or decay or whatever, because that's not really what it is. But what happened in her case, she had a miscarriage at like 5 weeks and carried it for a further 6 weeks, almost 7. And knowing at the back of her mind that this must have happened because the pregnancy wasn't developing the way it should have, but she didn't bleed or anything because that's what a miscarriage is. But she actually, because of what this fetus was causing in her body, night sweats and stuff like that. And she developed OCD in that every day she started washing her sheets, like every day, like every day. She'd sleep on them in the morning, she'd have to wash them. She couldn't sleep if she hadn't washed those sheets. That's an example of obsessive compulsive disorder. So the compulsions can be often are related to a certain trauma or event that triggers that OCD. Uh, OCD often is dual diagnosed with PTSD or post traumatic stress syndrome or post traumatic stress disorder. Those things often would be diagnosed together, as well as anxiety disorder, maybe panic disorder, and phobias. Remember, I said what often happens with mental health disorders is you might start off with one kind of in response to an event or something that happened. But the longer that goes untreated, the more likely you are to develop other things. And one of those things is you might have PTSD and it goes untreated over a period of time, but you will develop OCD because you haven't treated that and your mind is trying to cope in one way or the other. OCD can mean anytime you touch a door handle, you have to wash your hands. If you don't wash your hands, you feel like your hands start to itch or burn or something. So you have to do that thing, the compulsion. If you don't do it, you literally cannot function. And it shuts your mind to anything else. It makes you more anxious, more worried, more stressed, because you haven't done whatever that compulsion is. So for this woman, if she didn't wash those sheets, she can't sleep. She actually can't sleep. So she'd be awake all night for 2 nights, for 3 nights. She can't sleep until she washes those sheets. And that came through that traumatic miscarriage that she experienced. So how can stress lead to OCD? So again, it comes back to that control. People with OCD, the one thing that they're trying to do in terms of their thoughts, which is the obsessive, and the compulsions, which is the actions, is gain control. When we say obsessive, when we use the word obsessive in the context of mental health, it means somebody cannot stop thinking, obsessing. Their mind is on that thing, and those thoughts just won't go away. It's there all the time. So that's what obsessing is. It's repetitive thoughts that just stay there. And you cannot focus on anything else. You can't do anything else. It's there. And the compulsion is an action that must be carried out. Otherwise, you can't do anything else. Remember, I said stress is about control. And the more you do not control that stress, the more you develop these things, these disorders, due to uncontrollable. Now we're talking about thoughts, we're talking about actions that you just can't control them. They completely take over your life. You can't be productive, you can't be creative, you can't. It's those thoughts, those actions completely taking control. Same like we said with anxiety disorder, it's the worry, it's uncontrollable worry. Panic disorder, it's that uncontrollable, extreme fear, extreme panicking. When you're panicking, you've lost control. And if you know somebody who has panic disorder, from a clinical perspective, the more you try and fight the panic, the worse it gets. So the advice we would often give is let it run its course. Let it run its course. If it's that you're shaking, don't try and stop shaking. So, because the more you're doing that, the more you're losing control. But let it run its course. And often it doesn't last long. It seems like forever when the person is experiencing it. But it's really not that long. So you let it run its course. Sit down if you need to. The best thing, though, is to lie down, to actually lie down, because that helps to calm your heart rate. It helps to calm your body. Just lie down and let it run its course. It doesn't last that long, but it feels like forever because you've lost control. So if you learn to control your stressors, that stress management, you avoid a lot of mental health disorders, a lot, especially if you are prone to them. And what I mean by that, and we've talked about this before, is the fact that we can inherit conditions like anxiety from our parents. And when I say inherit, it's learned behavior as well as biological. So if your parents have depression, anxiety, some other mental health disorders, you are at a higher risk of developing mental health disorders yourself. Another reason why it's important to learn to manage your stress, especially if you know my mom is like this, my dad is like this, you are at a higher risk. It could be learned behavior, it could be biologically inherited, but you're at a higher risk. And I said it the week before and the week before that. That's why for parents, it's really, really important that you model for your children stress management. Talk to your children about stress, the dangers of stress. Teach them how to look after themselves and manage their own stress. Doesn't matter what age they're in. With kids, they might not be able to correctly say this is stress, but they know they don't feel okay. So use language that they understand, whatever level they're at. If it's your 4-year-old, 3-year-old, 2-year-old, teach them if you're not feeling happy, just sit down, lie down for 5 minutes, and then get up and run again. What you're teaching them is to listen to their bodies. And if you were listening last week or the week before, one of the reasons why we find it so challenging to manage stress in our lives is we've really made a habit of dismissing and ignoring our bodies when they're telling us something is wrong. So now your body has to shake, your heart rate has to go up, you have to sweat profusely to pay attention. But before, maybe your body used to give you just minor little things, little warning bells, and you ignored those. Now it's a full blown alarm to get your attention. I say to people who are diagnosed with anxiety disorder, yes, you have an anxiety disorder, but that does not mean you should dismiss the anxiety you feel as, oh, that's just because I have anxiety disorder. Pay attention. Why am I feeling heightened anxiety right now? Am I in a safe environment? What am I perceiving as a threat right now? Why am I feeling restless? Why am I feeling agitated? What thoughts keep running through my mind? Pay attention to that. Remember, I gave the example of the subliminal messaging, the experiment where people, I think it was like in the 40s or 50s, early psychology days, they did an experiment when people were watching movies, right? And they would quickly flash popcorn. And people's eyes were registering this, so the brain registered the quick subliminal message, but consciously people didn't realize. But they started suddenly start craving popcorn. And so they found by doing this, popcorn sales increased. But when people, did you see I don't know, I didn't see anything. I just wanted some popcorn. So your mind registers a lot of things that you are not conscious of, which means those things of which you are conscious, if you're not managing those properly, you are overloading your brain, you're overloading your nervous system. And that's why hormones start being out of whack, your body starts being out of whack, high blood pressure, pounding heart, shaky hands, profuse sweating. Your nervous system is responding to all the stimuli around it. I gave the example where I live, there's constant noise of traffic. I don't even notice it anymore most times. unless if it's extremely loud. But my mind does all the time. It's there. We call it background noise, white noise, whatever we want to call it. The fact is, our nervous system registers and responds to all these things all the time. And we just don't pay attention. So let's develop that attention to stimuli, to details, especially things that stress us out. I gave the example of so much noise in a space. So I just talked about the traffic outside. When I have my AC, sometimes it sounds like when it's kicking up, that makes a sound. Earlier, I was trying to make myself a cup of tea, and the electric jug or the kettle that I use, it sounds like a plane about to take off. And I was sitting here, and the noise that it was making, I was like, oh my goodness, I need something new. Like, why is it so loud? And the only reason I noticed how loud it was is because I was on a Zoom meeting and I now couldn't hear the person I was talking to. But I use this thing all the time. I don't notice the noise all the time, but my brain does. So there's traffic outside, I'm boiling water, my AC is on, maybe I have the TV or music in the background, so many things, and my nervous system is registering all of it, even when I'm not conscious of it. And stress is like that. So if we don't learn stress management, if we don't take inventory, like I said, write a list. What are the things that are stressing me out that you're conscious of at work, at school, in your social life, in your relationships, your finances, your duties at church, your volunteering, whatever it is, social media, all these things, list them. And then start eliminating the things you can control. You can't control what's on social media, but you can control your consumption of it. You can control who your company hires to work with you, but you can control your reaction and responses to what those people say and do. So whatever you can control, do that. What you cannot, cancel it out. Stop worrying about it. Stop obsessing about it. You have no control. Okay? So learn that stress management, and it will decrease your risk for mental health. So, what are some things you can do for both stress and anxiety? Take a time out, right? Like 5 minutes might not seem like a lot, but it makes a huge difference. I've said when you wake up in the morning, before you start on social media and doing this and doing that, just lie in bed for a few minutes. Do some deep breathing. Feel your body. Do I have any pain? Am I feeling rested? So take a time out. 2 minutes now and then. I remember when I first got my Apple Watch. I think I've turned that off, or they no longer include it. It would tell me it's time for a break, and it would do this. And I got so annoyed I turned it off. But now I actually see the value in that, because some of us are so busy, we don't realize that we're not actually taking a moment or two just to deep breathe and relax. And when you are stressed, chances are you are breathing shallow, right? You're intaking oxygen at shallow levels. So taking that time out just allows you, enables you to take a few deep breaths, Make sure your body is getting enough, just that simple thing, oxygen. We're not talking about something we think about, oh, I need to remember to breathe. We don't. We breathe naturally. You're alive, you're breathing. You don't need to remember. But you might not actually notice that you're taking shallow breaths quite a lot. And you need to take some of those deep breaths. Okay? So take a time out. Eat well-balanced meals. So don't skip meals, because hunger in your stomach is stress to your brain. Your brain starts to register, I haven't eaten today, the cramps in your stomach, the extra gas, whatever it is. Your nervous system registers that before you do. So don't skip any meals. Always keep healthy, energy boosting snacks on hand. Healthy, energy boosting snacks on hand. I've mentioned before, get enough sleep, take deep breaths, exercise daily, limit, this is very important, limit alcohol and caffeine. Some of us, when we're stressed, we want coffee. That is the wrong thing. Why? Caffeine increases our heartbeats. Caffeine is not designed to help us relax. So when you are stressed out, when you are anxious, I noticed like my body has now adjusted. But when I first started drinking coffee, I would get agitated, like really agitated. And my heart rate would be up and I would be agitated. I can't relax. I can't, because of the caffeine. So I cut back. Sometimes when I'm like highly stressed, it's a period of stress in my life, I cut out the caffeine completely. I drink caffeine when I'm good, when I'm happy, when I'm relaxed, I don't have major stresses, then I'll drink coffee. If I am in a stressful period, I cut out the coffee because it doesn't help my stress. Slowly count to 10. This is particularly when you're experiencing anxiety, panic, those types of things. Counting to 10 slowly. And you don't have to do it just once. You can count to 10. You're still feeling, start again. You can do it 10 times, 10. But the idea is to focus your mind on those numbers. Do it slowly. You might take a deep breath after each number. But counting slowly, repeat, count to 20, 30, 100 if necessary, until you get to a place where you're feeling more relaxed, more in control. Perfectionism. Okay, so I'm looking at a chart here, and one of the things it says is do your best. Forget being perfect, because that is a stressor. Everything must be perfect. People who are perfectionists, I guarantee you, have high stress levels. I guarantee you, if you're one of those people who's like, I'm a perfectionist, you're essentially saying, I'm stressed out. Do your best, but there's no need to be perfect. Be proud of whatever it is you achieve, how close you get. Set goals. Okay, today I wanted to spend 30 minutes in the gym. I could only do 15. Great. Build on that 15. Before you know it, you can do 30. But a perfectionist wants to do 30 day one. And that's not the goal in life. Perfectionists, I guarantee you, are stressed out people, have challenges even socially and in their relationships and in multiple domains of their lives. So let go of that idea of being perfect, okay? Accept that you can't control everything. Maintain a positive but realistic attitude. Volunteer. This has like volunteers tend to be happier people in life because you feel good. You helped someone not because of expectations or pay or anything. You had some time, you have some skills, you gave a helping hand. And people who volunteer tend to be less stressed and happier generally in life. So learn to give back to your community. The world doesn't revolve around you. Your own life should not revolve around you, right? That's where we start like wading into narcissistic territory. Learn what triggers your anxiety, learn what are your stresses, and like I always say, get help. If you've tried managing your stress or anxiety by yourself and you just aren't getting any joy, go and see a therapist. Get help. Get help. If you haven't been to the doctor and you've been experiencing some of the things I've mentioned, the elevated heart rates and all of that, sleeplessness, loss of appetite, or you're eating way too much, go see a doctor. Go get a proper diagnosis. But if you can't do that, go talk to someone. It could be a trusted friend. Remember, I've said it's great that we want to share with our family and friends, but make sure it's somebody you can trust. Make sure it's somebody who is sensitive and sensible, right? Sometimes we confide in people that, like, in the end, you're just regretting, like, why did I even tell that person? So choose very, very carefully who you share your issues and problems with. Tell friends and family. If you're feeling overwhelmed, even your employer, your boss, one of the things I try and do with my staff when I'm doing their supervision is ask them about their stress levels, about the things that they're worrying about. And it's not that I want those details, and I tell them I don't need details. I just need to know, how are you coping? Are you coping? If they need time off, if they're sick. One thing I tell my staff, if you're off sick, please don't be texting and emailing anything. You're supposed to be resting. If you know you're going on vacation, do everything you absolutely need to so that no one is calling you, texting you, asking you questions, and you don't feel the need to do that as well. If you have a work phone, work laptop, I tell them, let the power on that thing die. Let it go flat. So you're not tempted to be logging in and chatting about work when you're supposed to be off sick or on vacation. Sometimes, yes, we end up contacting someone, but that's because that vacation was not properly planned. So take time out. Time out is not just that 5 minutes, it's vacations. Like I've had to remind some people I work with that, by the way, you have 2 weeks vacation and I expect you to take it this year. Because some of us in our cultures, we don't prioritize vacation. We think it's being a good employee to turn up to work sick. It's not. It's absolutely not. So when I'm saying take time out, I'm talking about that 5 minutes every day, but I'm also talking about going on vacation, taking sick days when you need to. I'm aware that I've run out of time. I hope that our discussions on stress have been good. Text or email if you have certain topics you would like me to cover. 437-778-3299 or email infolovebay@gmail.com. Thank you for listening. Have a wonderful rest of the week and the rest of September and the rest of 2024. Look after each other, be kind and compassionate, and manage your stress. Good night.